It's quite a confrontational question for me to ask, actually, because it's about something that happened, say, half an hour ago,
Right.
which was the Glastonbury tour thing. And you misheard it as Thor. And what happened in me was I went into a panic that there was going to be, and actually I felt it was in the room, that there was going to be an embarrassing misunderstanding, and then worse, that you'd somehow get it wrong, and then my bubble would be burst, and it would all collapse.
And this is because you desire Jesus to be right all the time.
Yes, and that it is actually true, you know. And then what happened to me was I lost my energy, and this is what happens to me a lot. I suddenly felt very despondent and lost energy. And actually, when I went to the loo, when I was in the loo, I had this really angry feeling of like, I don't want to be here anymore, and and it was very much connected to this potential, this terror of embarrassment, but also a terror that you would be exposed somehow, and it would all come crashing down.
Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? Like, Jesus always must be right. If I could tell you how many times I've heard this over my last 2,000 years of existence. The whole reason why the Christian faith said that I was God is because they wanted me to always be right. Yeah. I am not always right. Yeah. Get used to it. Now, the reason why I'm not always right is quite obvious. Only God is always right. And I am not God. Now, why do we want somebody to be always right? Sometimes I do, but I didn't. So why do we want people to always be right?
You.
No, why do we want someone other than yourself
yeah,
to be always
right?
Why do you want that?
Well, in that sense of being able to rely on somebody that they're going to...
Yeah, it's all, isn't it? There's a lot of stuff in it, isn't
earlier,
it?
what you were saying about, the whole idea of Jesus, that sense of salvation. Somebody's going to sort it out for you in some way, I suppose. It's that relying on somebody.
Okay, so it gives us a feeling of safety.
Yes.
Security.
Yes.
What else does it give us? There's a lot of things that it helps us avoid.
Yeah, because it's like I had such a panic that it was all going to...
So you have deep fears about it.
Yeah.
I agree. So, but what does it help you avoid?
You being right.
If I'm always right, what does it help you avoid?
Taking responsibility for the decision.
Yes, taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
And is that connected to why I lost energy?
For your own life. It helps you avoid that. Because you can go, oh, but Jesus told me that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I did it. It's all his fault that it's all wrong now, right? Yeah. You can say that, right? Because you're abdicating self-responsibility. Now, in a way, what you want is a cult leader. Because a cult leader will do that for you.
Yeah. I think you'd be much more popular if you were a cult leader.
Yeah, no, I know. But I'm not a cult leader.
Yeah, it's a shame.
I'm just a guy going around, travelling around the world, sharing truth with people.
Yeah.
And in some cases, as it is when I analyse people's personal issues, it's my opinion.
Yeah.
And sometimes my opinion will be
wrong.
Yeah, sometimes it's going to be wrong.
Yeah.
And you've got to look at why you want it to always be right. I'm not embarrassed when I'm wrong.
Yeah, you see, I was like, and
I
don't know if anybody else felt it. I felt that there was a kind of, oh my God, we're going to, and then, oh no, thank God it's all right. You know?
Yeah. And I'm not embarrassed when I'm wrong. I think, oh, there's a good learning experience. Why was I wrong? Oh, it might have been because of this or that or whatever it was that I felt at the time, right? And I can analyse that myself and work my way through the issue. Also, the fact is that God is infinite and God knows the infinite truth. That being the case, and I'm a finite creation of God growing, right, in my relationship with God, there is never going to be a time in my future where I'm always right.
Yeah.
Now, you can always love while at the same time being wrong.
Yeah.
Be very careful that you don't see one basic truth, and this is this. And it's worth writing on the board, so I'll write it. The basic truth is this. The only real mistake is to not love. What I see people doing today is they think a lack of knowledge is a mistake. A lack of knowledge isn't a mistake. All of us in the universe have a lack of knowledge aside from God. How can it be a mistake? It's not a mistake. God created this infinite universe so that we have a lack of knowledge and a desire to gain more knowledge. It makes life interesting, in fact. That's the reason why God created it that way. A lack of knowledge is not the problem. It's the lack of love that is our problem. That is the only real mistake that we can engage, a lack of love. And what I see people doing with me in particular, because I'm Jesus and so I have to be God, right? So in a way, you want me to be the Christian ideal of Jesus, which is Jesus is God.
I was going to say, ironically, since I'm not a Christian, but yes,
ironically,
maybe that's...
You were an atheist and you want that,
yes,
right?
You know,
Work that out.
Ways, yeah.
But this is what often happens, right, is that we don't realise how much what we want is driven by our own unhealed emotional desires. So it's got nothing to do with who I am, really. It's got everything to do with what emotions in you want, this guru-type Jesus that you want to create is going to give you. If you just leave it on, babe.
Okay. I was going to say, does that come back to the issue of will, then, this sense of responsibility? Like I'm sort of handing my will over to you. Is that what I'm doing?
You want to hand your will, and this is how cult leaders get created, is that you have a group of people who want to hand over their will to a person. And the reason why they want to hand over their will to a person is because when they hand over their will to the person, they get to avoid responsibility, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
That's why they do it. And this is why there is a large growth of cults on the planet, including religious cults, political cults, and all sorts of different, and gurus and all those kind of things. Is the reason why there is such a large growth in all of those areas is because of one reason, and that is we want them. Yeah. And the reason why we want them is because they help us avoid personal responsibility. We can just sit there and go, what do you want me to do now? And they tell you what to do and you go, no worries. Yeah. And then when it all goes pear-shaped and it all goes wrong in our personal life, we say, yeah, that person was a bastard. We should, you know...
You don't realise you're doing it. You don't realise you're in this process.
Exactly, you don't. And what I'm suggesting to you is the only mistake you can make is to not love. Yeah. So don't be worried about making mistakes other than not loving.
Yeah.
So let yourself go through your life discovering things and experimenting with things and realise that you're allowed to make mistakes because you don't know everything.
No.
Right? And you're never going to know everything. Ever. And what we often want is we want somebody who knows everything so that we don't have to take personal responsibility for our mistakes. And the reason why we do that is because we're afraid of being punished for our mistakes.
Yes.
But God does not punish you for your mistakes.
No.
God only corrects you, or there is a penalty or consequence on your soul when you don't love.
Yeah.
When you make the choice to not love. That's the time when there's going to be a penalty on soul. Not when you make any other mistake. You're allowed to have a mistake in knowledge. You're allowed to believe the wrong things. You're allowed to do all sorts of things. And God's not going to punish any of those things. And in fact, you might not even have a negative result from any of those things. But when you choose to not love, you will always have a negative result in your life, a negative result in the lives of people around you and so forth.
And not taking responsibility in itself is unloving.
Exactly.
It's a demand on you to be in that role.
Wanting somebody else, no matter who it is, Jesus, God, some guru, whatever, wanting somebody else to take control or responsibility for your life is an unloving projection on that person.
Yes,
Now, to my credit, I don't do it, right, with you.
Yeah.
But a lot of other people, see you guys, a lot of other people would.
Yeah.
And this is how whole organisations get created and cults get created. And this is how like 900 people die in mass suicides by the giving away of their will and the giving away of their responsibility to other people. So my suggestion is don't do that. Right? Don't do that. Honour the fact that the only real mistake you can make is to love. Anything else you view as a mistake isn't a mistake from God's perspective, and you need to work through the emotional reason why you believe it's a mistake. Yeah. And we need to work through the emotional reasons why we feel, like if we make a mistake, we're going to be hurt by somebody or punished by somebody or so forth. These are all childhood things that happen to us. They've got nothing to do with our relationship with God. Yeah. And I am going to be wrong. Okay. You need to get used to it.
I'll bear that in mind.
Yeah, you're going to be wrong too, by the way. Get used to that too.
Yeah.
Now, there will be people you meet who obviously know a lot more than you do about life, about God's laws, because they've been wrong many times in the past and worked their way through all of that, right? Yeah. And found out more of God's truth. Yeah. They're worth listening to, but understand they also have their own opinions, and they're allowed to have their own opinions, and some of their opinions will be wrong. Yeah. Right? This is why your relationship with God is so important. It's only God that can actually correct all of these things in you. Yeah. So Jesus can't do it, nor can any other person do it. And if you expect them to do it, then you're out of harmony with love. Yeah. Because the way God created is God and you. Between God and you, everything can be sorted. Everything. Yeah. And perhaps that's a good place to leave our discussion today.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.